This is an interesting article from the Financial Times. It is behind a paywall, but I'm going to do it for you, or do it for all of us. It's titled, "The Relationship Recession is Going Global. A rise in the number of single people is becoming a key driver of the failing birth rates." And this goes along perfectly with the whole birth rate conversation that we have been having, because this is indeed a global phenomenon. People may not know and understand that it's global, but it certainly is. There's a reason birth rates are an increasingly prominent feature in discourse and policymaking today. Population aging and decline is one of the most powerful forces in the world, shaping everything from economics to politics and the environment. But a weakness to the debate, perhaps even the term birth rates itself, is that it implies the goal is the same today as it was in the past. Finding ways to encourage couples to have more children, a closer look at the data suggests a whole new challenge. Take the U.S. as an example. Between 1960 and 1980, the average number of children born to a woman halved from almost 4 to 2, even as the share of women in married couples edged only modestly lower. There were still plenty of couples in happy, stable relationships. They were just electing to have smaller families. The cool thing about this article is that it gave us graphs. So you can see at the very top, it was a little over 3.5 births per woman in 1960. And then it dropped dramatically, like right before the 1980. That probably had to do with the pill, because women probably didn't want to have that many babies. And then you see it was a slight curve up, and then it has been fallen to the point where live births per woman is about 1.6 children per woman here in the United States. This article also gave us many other countries, and I'll do a few of them at random. Like Afghanistan in 1960 was 7.3 births. Now it's down to 4.8. Albania, 6.4, and now it's down to 1.3. Algeria, 7.5 births in 1960, down to 2.8. American Samoa, it was at 6.6 in 1960, 2.3 in 2023. Angola, 6.7 births in 1960, and is still pretty high at 5.1 births per woman. The Bahamas was at 5.1 in 1960. It dropped to 1.4 in 2023. Barbados was at 4.7 in 1960. It dropped down to 1.7 in 2023. Like I said, I'm not going to do all of these countries. Canada was at 3.8 in 1960. It dropped down to 1.3 in 2023. Now, these two that I have highlighted in yellow is very interesting, because the Central African Republic was around 6 in 1960, and it's still around 6 now. And Chad was at 6.3 in 1960, and it's just slightly under that at 6.1. So those countries have stayed relatively same. So I'm wondering if that has to do with birth control access. The Congo was at 6.1 in 1960. It's still at 6.1. The Dominican Republic was at 7.6 back in 1960. It's dropped down dramatically to 2.2. So you see, Denmark was at 2.6. So it was already low in 1960, and it's dropped down to 1.5 in 2023. Iran was at 7.5. It's dropped down to 1.7. Iraq was at 5.3. It's dropped down to 3.2. Italy was already low back in 1960 at 2.4, and it has cut that in half to 1.2. Here's some of the continents. Africa in 1960, 6.6 births on average. It's dropped in 2023 on average 4.1. Asia was in 5.2 in 1960. It's dropped slightly below 2 at 1.9. Europe, 2.6 in 1960, so it's always seemed kind of low, and it's dropped to 1.4 in 2023. High-income countries was at 3 births per woman in 1960, and that's halved at 1.3. So if you all want to see more, please just let me know in the comments if you want to see a particular country, because this article definitely had lots of countries listed. I just didn't go through all of them. Okay, let's get back to the article. I had to make it big because these letters are so small. It says, but in recent years, most of the fall is coming not from the decisions made by couples, but from a marked fall in the number of couples. Had the U.S. rates of marriage and cohabitation remained constant over the past decade, America's total fertility rate would be higher today than it was then. The central demographic story of modern times is not just declining rates of childbearing, but rising rates of singledom, a much more fundamental shift in the nature of modern societies. Relationships are not just becoming less common, but increasingly fragile. In egalitarian Finland, it is now more common for couples who move in together to split up than to have a child, a sharp reversal of the historical norm. When pictured as a rise up in happily childless dinks, dual income, no kids couples with plenty of disposable income, social trends accompanying falling birth rates seem benign. But as the rise of singledom and relationship dissolution is a less rosy story, especially considering the drop in relationship formation is steepest among the poorest. Of course, many people are happily single. The freedom to choose how to spend one's life and who with or without is to be celebrated. But the wider data on loneliness and dating frustrations suggests not all is well. The trend is global. From the US, Finland, and South Korea to Turkey, Tunisia, and Thailand, falling birth rates are increasingly downstream of a relationship recession among young adults. Baby bonuses put the cart before the horse when a growing share of people are without a partner. Even in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, similar trends may be underway. Why an almost worldwide decline, and why now? The fact that this is happening almost everywhere all at once points to more broad changes acting across borders than country-specific factors. The proliferation of smartphones and social media has been one such exogenous shock. Geographical differences in the rise of singledom broadly track mobile internet usage, particularly among women, whose calculus in weighing up potential partners is changing. This is consistent with research showing social media facilitates the spread of liberal values, notably only among women, and boosts female empowerment. Y'all, the messages are getting out. We need to read that again. All right, it says, this is consistent with research showing social media facilitates the spread of liberal values, notably only among women, and boosts female empowerment. That is huge. What we are doing is spreading. All right, it says the fall in coupling is deepest in extremely online Europe, East Asia, and Latin America, followed by the Middle East and then Africa. Singledom remains rare in South Asia, where women's web access is more limited. This is not to overstate the role of social media. Other cultural differences between countries and regions mediate both the spread of liberal ideals and people's ability to act on them. Caste and honor systems encourage high rates of marriage, irrespective of media access, and female education, income, and employment differ markedly between regions. But while the specific mechanisms are up for debate, the proliferation of singledom and its role in cratering birth rates show that while financial incentives and other policy tweaks can nudge birth rates higher, they are laboring against much stronger socio-cultural forces. Policies aimed at facilitating relationship formation might be more effective than those aimed at helping couples have babies. A world of rising singledom is not necessarily any better or worse than one filled with couples and families, but it is fundamentally different to what has come before with major social, economic, and political implications. We are faced with a conundrum. Is this what people really want? If not, what needs to change? That is a great question. What needs to change? And like I said, this has all come about because of social media. Social media is showing women what is going on and why a lot of these things are not right. Because I was noticing these birth rates over the past couple of years. We've been reporting on the birth rate articles. And many of these articles is like so much hand wringing. The world leaders are so worried, but they won't do things like fix the cost of living, the childcare situation, the dads participating in the home life and with the children, all of these things that women globally are saying. They're not fixing those because a lot of it is cultural and because of the patriarchy. This is an article that I'm about to do in a part 2. Glorify fatherhood to make more babies, suggests Nobel laureate. I'm about to get right on that in part 2. So I just did an article that was talking about the relationship recessions, and it said that the relationship recession is going global. And to counteract the birth rates, you got to first talk about the relationships and more people but choosing to be single. So this person says, glorify fatherhood to make babies, suggests Nobel laureate. So let's get into this article. It says, glorifying parenthood, especially fatherhood, could help reverse falling birth rates, according to Nobel laureate for economics, Claudia Goldin, who argues that rapid economic growth causes a culture clash at home. Low fertility is more common when countries are catapulted into modernity, Goldin finds in a working paper published last month. Rapid economic change often challenges strongly held beliefs, and beliefs change more slowly than technology does and economies do. Women in countries such as Italy and Spain gained autonomy and access to jobs when men were still expected to be little involved in household chores, so large families were less appealing to mothers than fathers, the study suggests. So it says that when those women gained autonomy and access to jobs when men were still expected to be little involved in household chores, so large families were less appealing to mothers than fathers. The reason for the difference is that women spend more time with their children, often sacrificing their careers or by having lower incomes and thus becoming economically vulnerable. If they are divorced or separated, they and their children may suffer. They know this in advance and, in consequence, will resist having more children. But if fathers and husbands can credibly commit to providing the time and the resources, the difference in fertility desires between genders would disappear. The U.S. baby boom was partly accomplished by glorifying marriage, motherhood, the good wife, and the home, Goldin says. Can a turnaround be accomplished by glorifying parenthood, especially fatherhood, and changing workplace rules so fathers are not penalized by taking time off and requesting flexible work arrangements? One thing is clear: unless the negative relationship between income and fertility is reversed, the birth rate will probably not increase. According to UN data, 2/3 of the world's population lives in countries with fertility below the replacement rate of 2.1 children per family. Without immigration, low fertility rates translate into a shrinking share of the population in working age, limiting economic growth and tax revenues. At the same time, an aging population adds pressure on health and pension spending. Anti-immigrant sentiment and populist rhetoric have focused attention on increasing birth rates, especially of native-born population. Policymakers have adopted various measures to have more babies in the country, including baby bonuses in Italy, Greece, and Hungary, but so far with little success. Goldin highlights that in countries including Greece, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Portugal, and Spain, fertility rates plummeted in the 80s and 90s and are now at their lowest low rates, below 1.3 per woman. These countries all experienced rapid growth in GNP per capita after a long period of stagnation or decline. What women require of men's time to raise a family and be members of a modern labor market may exceed the time their more tradition-bound spouses or future spouses are willing to offer. The paper cites OECD data showing men in rapidly modernizing developed countries do considerably less housework and domestic care relative to women than their counterparts in steadily growing economies. I'm going to say that again. The paper cites OECD data showing men in rapidly modernizing developed countries do considerably less housework and domestic care relative to women than their counterparts in steadily growing economies. When childcare is mostly done by mothers, women desire fewer births than do their husbands, she finds. Thus, swift economic change may lead to both generational and gender conflicts that result in a rapid decrease in total fertility rate. So, what does that say? Women are tired, is basically what I just read. Adding to conflict, rapid economic growth is often associated with larger migration from rural areas to cities. It is the speed with which tradition-bound people are catapulted into modernity that gives generations little time to adapt and brings old ways into sudden conflict with the new, says Goldin. The research also notes that countries with rapid economic growth and low fertility rates often have strong religious traditions, such as in Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece. For Japan and South Korea, cultural norms or filial piety, ancestor worship, and clan identity are additional reasons why men might be more attached to the past than are women. Women are usually the caretakers of the elderly, and they still have to do the caretaking for the children. So that means that women have double the work, maybe even quadruple the work, if they're having to take care of their elderly parents and their husband's elderly parents. All right, it says in 2023, fertility rates were 1.2 per woman in Italy and Japan, 1.12 in Spain, and 0.72 in South Korea, according to the latest official statistics. Those figures contrast with the US, Denmark, France, Germany, Sweden, and the UK, where economic growth last century was relatively continuous and fertility rates remained around 2 per woman until the 2010s. When nations develop more continuously and across a longer time frame, less generational conflict arises, and the fertility desires of men and women are more similar, says Goldin. Household and caring tasks are more evenly divided within couples, and fertility levels are in consequence higher. So what does that say to you? What does all of this say to you? It says what a lot of women are saying on my pages, why they are opting out, why child-free women are on the incline, why people are saying that they do not want to live with anybody else, why they are choosing to remain single. There are so many issues at play currently in many of these countries. Childcare being non-existent. If it is existent, it's too expensive. Politics of restricting women's rights. You can't make women just have the kids. So instead, let's try to restrict abortion and other things. And with that restriction of women's rights, that's pushing the medical community out of those particular places. We have an anti-education society. We have all kinds of things going on in these countries. So let me know what you think about all of this put together. Join the conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you made it this far and you're not yet following me, go ahead and smash the follow button.